wind moved across the plains like something alive, slipping through every tear in cloth and every crack in the earth. The night was merciless, the kind that punished anyone foolish or unlucky enough to be caught beneath it. Snow dusted the ground in thin layers, not yet deep, but cold enough to numb the feet and harden the breath. The native woman stood alone beside a fading fire, its orange glow shrinking with every passing minute. Her shawl was worn thin, her hands stiff as she held them close to her chest. She did not cry. The cold had already taken that strength from her. She listened more than she looked. Years of survival had trained her ears to catch what her eyes could not. So when the soft crunch of hooves reached her, she did not startle. She turned slowly, dark eyes meeting the shape of a man on horseback emerging from the shadow of the night. He did not rush toward her. He did not shout. That alone set him apart from the others she had known. The cowboy stopped several steps away, the horse snorting quietly in the cold. Frost clung to his coat, and his face was lined by weather and time. He studied the empty camp, the abandoned bedroll, the broken kettle, the fire that had almost given up. He'd seen scenes like this before, and they never ended well. "You'll die out here," he said, not cruelly, not kindly, just honest. She said nothing. Words had too often been used against her. He slid down from the saddle and loosened his coat, holding it out in both hands, as if offering something fragile. "I'm not here to hurt you," he added, though he seemed to know how empty such promises could sound. "The night's getting worse." Her gaze moved from the coat to his eyes, searching for something she could trust. All she found was weariness that matched her own. The fire crackled weakly between them, throwing long shadows across the snow. "Come with me," the cowboy said at last, his voice low, steady. "Just till morning. That's all I'm asking." The wind howled as if daring her to refuse. The cold sank deeper into her bones, and the fire finally gave up, leaving only smoke and embers. After a long moment, she stepped forward. The distance between them closed, not with fear, but with necessity. As she took the coat, warmth brushed her skin for the first time in hours. The night did not soften, but something else did, and that was enough to take the first step into the darkness beside him. The horse moved at a careful pace through the dark, its hooves breaking the thin crust of snow with a steady, comforting rhythm. The native woman sat behind the cowboy, stiff at first, keeping as much distance as the saddle allowed. Her fingers gripped the edge of his coat, not out of trust, but out of balance. The wind pressed against them from every direction, carrying the distant howl of something wild and hungry. Each sound made her tense, memories rising like ghosts she could not push away. The cowboy did not look back. He knew better than to crowd her with words or glances. His body remained steady, guiding the horse as if the night itself were familiar to him. When the wind cut too sharply, he shifted slightly, shielding her without comment. She noticed. She noticed everything. Time stretched until it lost meaning. Her legs ached, and the cold clawed at her despite the coat's warmth. Just as her strength began to fade, a dim light appeared ahead, flickering between tall pines. The cabin emerged slowly, crouched against the land as though it had grown there rather than been built. Smoke rose from the chimney, thin but real, and her breath caught at the sight of it. Inside, warmth wrapped around her like something forgotten. The fire snapped and hissed, filling the small space with light and sound. The cowboy removed his hat and set it aside, then placed a tin cup of water near her without meeting her eyes. He turned his back deliberately, tending to the fire, giving her the dignity of privacy. She drank slowly, hands trembling as feeling returned to her fingers. He set bread on the table, rough and plain. "It's all I've got," he said. She nodded and ate, the simple food grounding her more than she expected. The walls were bare, the furnishings scarce, but nothing about the cabin felt threatening. Outside, the storm began to build, wind rattling the door as snow thickened against the windows. "You can stay," the cowboy said quietly. "No one's coming here tonight." She watched him closely, searching for the hidden cost behind the words. "Why?" she asked at last, her voice hoarse from disuse. He shrugged, pouring coffee into another cup. "Because the night doesn't care who you are, and neither do I." Silence settled between them, heavy but not cruel. As the storm sealed the world outside, she sat closer to the fire. letting the warmth seep into places the cold had reached too deeply. For the first time since the night began, she allowed her shoulders to relax just a little as the cabin held them both against the darkness. Morning arrived without ceremony, a pale light slipping through the frost-rimmed window and settling across the wooden floor. The storm had spent itself during the night, leaving behind a world hushed and heavy with snow. The native woman awoke slowly, unsure at first where she was. The fire had burned low, embers glowing softly, and the cabin smelled of smoke, leather, and something bitter she later recognized as coffee. For a moment she remained still, listening for danger. There was none, only the quiet creak of wood and the distant call of a bird testing the cold air. She rose and wrapped the coat tighter around herself, stepping toward the window. Outside, the land looked untouched, smooth and endless, as if the night had erased every painful track leading to this place. It stirred something inside her she had almost forgotten, a sense of space, a breathing without fear. She pressed her palm against the glass, leaving a faint mark that vanished almost immediately. Behind her, the cowboy moved quietly, not wanting to startle her awake. He poured hot coffee into a tin cup and set it on the table, the steam curling upward like a signal fire. "Storm's past," he said, "but the snow's thick. Roads will be slow today." She turned to face him, studying his expression in the daylight. He looked no less worn than before, but the shadows in his eyes were softer now. "And after today?" she asked. He met her gaze evenly. "That's up to you." The words struck her harder than the cold ever had. Choice had been taken from her so many times that she barely recognized it. She sat and told him her story in fragments at first, about her people, scattered and hunted, about the night she was taken, and the long road that followed. She spoke without tears, as if the pain belonged to someone else. He listened, hands folded, never interrupting, never offering hollow comfort. When she finished, the silence felt different. Not empty, clean. "I'm heading north," he said finally. "There's land there most folks don't want. Quiet, safe. If you're careful." She looked down at her hands, still scarred, still real. "You don't know me," she said. He gave a small nod. "No, but I know what it is to be left behind." Outside, the sun climbed higher, casting light across the snow. For the first time in a long while, she felt the weight of the future pressing forward instead of down. The cabin no longer felt like a shelter borrowed from chance, but a place where a path had begun to form, uncertain, fragile but hers to step onto. The sky was clear when they stepped outside, a sharp blue stretching endlessly above the snow-covered land. The cold remained, but it no longer felt hostile, as if the storm had taken its cruelty with it when it passed. The native woman stood beside the cabin, breathing in the crisp air, letting it fill her lungs without pain. For the first time in many days, she did not feel hunted. The silence around them was wide and honest, broken only by the soft shift of the trees and the quiet snort of the horse. The cowboy saddled up with practiced ease, his movements calm, unhurried. He worked as if he expected no resistance from the world, only its patience. She watched him, noting how he checked the straps twice, how he brushed snow from the saddle before mounting. Small details, but they mattered. When he finished, he turned to her, the reins loose in his hand. "I'm heading north," he said again. Not as a reminder, but as a truth he was offering. "You don't owe me anything. You can walk away now if you want." She considered the land around them, the empty stretch of white, the long distances between safety and danger. Walking away would mean returning to uncertainty alone. Staying would mean trusting a stranger whose kindness had no clear reason. Yet something in his voice carried no demand, no expectation of obedience. That alone made the choice feel real. He extended his hand, not to pull her forward, but to steady her if she chose to climb. "Come with me," he said softly. The words were the same as the night before, but they felt different in the daylight. No longer a plea for survival. They were an invitation into something undefined. She stepped closer, placing her hand briefly in his. His grip was firm, warm, then gone as she mounted the horse behind him. There was no hesitation now, no stiffness in her posture. She sat upright, eyes forward, sharing the road ahead. They rode north together, the cabin shrinking behind them until it disappeared entirely. The land opened wide, untouched and unforgiving, but also free. The future offered no promises of comfort or peace, only movement and choice. Yet as the horse carried them onward, she felt a quiet certainty settle in her chest. Whatever waited beyond the horizon, she would not face it in silence anymore. The cold still followed them, the world still dangerous. But she was no longer standing alone in the night, and that made all the difference.